watch like 7, the vitalize. Inner circles here, where voices thrive. Turn on your screens, let the magic unfold. Listening and healing as stories are told. Come on, come on, this is your time. No topics too tough, just heed the calls. From mental health woes to justice we seek. Together we rise for the strong and the meek. A safe space for all, let's lift every voice. Inner Circle podcast where hearts unite. Sharing our truths, bringing hope to the light. Community strong, we're never alone. Together as one, we've created a home. With laughter and love, we break down the walls. No topics too tough, just heed the calls. From mental health woes to justice we seek. Together we rise for the strong and the meek. A safe space for all, let's lift every voice. So join the conversation, let's set the tone. Inner Circle podcast where love is well known.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening to all our audience out there. Tonight is going to be a very, we have a special guest tonight. Welcome to Inner Circle Podcast, where we bring you engaging and honest conversations, and we bring you guests that provide great information for our community. So tonight we have Chief Mike Bruley. He's a chief of police of the city of Broken Park, Indiana in Minnesota, where Broken Park is, I think, the 6th largest city in the state of Minnesota. So tonight we have the chief here, and our topic tonight is balancing public safety in the midst of immigration crackdowns. As he said, it's a very hot topic. A lot has been going on since the new administration. So tonight we have Chief Bruley here to kind of, educate our audience out there, especially those in the city of Broken Park. Broken Park has a huge immigrant population. Before we could come on live, right, the chief said 1 in 5, citizens of Broken Park is an immigrant. So tonight the chief is going to help us to, allay some of those fears and all the things that's going on. And as usual, we have our panelists here with us. So I'm Abe Kamara, your host. Mel.
I'm Melvin Lionel Zia, one of your panelists here tonight.
Wayne.
Edwin Dolko in the building tonight.
Peterson.
Yeah, this is Peterson from Chicago. Thank you all for the show.
Okay. With that, folks, again, our topic tonight is balancing public safety and inclusion amid immigration crackdown. So, again, our special guest is Chief Mike Bruley. He's the chief of police of the city of Broken Park. Chief, if you can introduce yourself to our audience and, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, Abraham. Thank you. First, I want to thank you for inviting me on here. This is super important for us in the Broken Park Police Department to get our voice out there and get it to all people in our community. And so taking time and allowing us to come on is great. I appreciate it. My name is Mark Bruley. I'm the police chief of the city of Brooklyn Park. I've been the police chief for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I've been with the city of Brooklyn Park for 30 years. So I was previously a deputy chief and served in a bunch of different roles over those 30 years. And so I really do look at Brooklyn Park as an amazing place because I've been part of that community and I've seen the great moments and certainly some very sad moments in our history. But it certainly has given me a passion for the community. So thank you again for having me on.
Okay. Well, with that, so the first question for you, Chief, as I said, right, is like the new administration has come down like very hard on immigration, right? They are like there's immigration. Like ISIS all over the place, right? As you have been hearing, right? What is the city of Broken Park doing to assure that the citizens of Broken Park, right, that hey, you can be safe, you shouldn't worry about things and stuff like that?
Yeah, great question. First off, when the new administration came in and indicated that they were going to step up enforcement of illegal immigration, we immediately started to look at the policies, connect with what I have as a community group of community members that serve as my advisory board, where I lean into them for advice and use them as a sounding board in the community. And immediately we heard a lot of concern in the immigrant community. Again, you had alluded to it, 1 in 5 individuals, residents of Brooklyn Park, are foreign born. And we have 87,000 people in our community. And so we are very diverse. 64% of those 87,000 people are people of color. So we have a lot of diversity. We have a lot of immigrants who have a lot of concern. And so as a city, we're trying to find out how we can, one, show support and, quite honestly, love for our community, because we are a community of immigrants. And but we also got to acknowledge that we are not the federal government. ICE does not reach out to me, right? ICE does not, let me know what they're doing or when they're in town. And they don't have to. They're a federal agency, very similar, quite honestly, to the IRS. The IRS doesn't tell me when they're doing checks on people's taxes if they're paying taxes. But sometimes if there's violent criminals, which is certainly the business of the Brooklyn Park Police Department, and then those violent criminals are illegal, we do work together as a federal agency, just like we work with the FBI. So some people would say, well, you said that you don't work with ICE, and then we seen you working with ICE. Sometimes that's true. I mean, when our paths cross, it's because they are looking for somebody who's illegal, and we're looking for somebody who's very dangerous, and we may arrest them. And sometimes when ICE has a warrant, we may hand those individuals off. And again, that's a really rare set of circumstances when we're investigating really harsh crimes like, kidnappings, smuggling, trafficking. Human trafficking would be one that we cross paths with them. But day in and day out, we do not work with ICE, and we certainly don't ask our community if they're legal, illegal. That is not part of what we do as police officers in the city of Brooklyn Park.
Okay, Wayne, any question for the chief?
No, just taking it all in.
Okay, Mel, question for the chief?
Yeah, Chief Mark, thank you for joining us to discuss such an important topic here tonight. And we appreciate your time for being on the show. As it relates to, the ongoing immigration crisis, my question to you tonight would be, what steps is the police department taking to ensure public safety while being inclusive of immigration community?
Yeah, great question.
Or the immigrant community.
Yeah, great question. And we work on this a lot. We have certain places in Brooklyn Park that have lots of immigrants. And so we have already established in the last 2 years deep relationships in these communities, because we do something called the Police 101 class. And that is where we bring our officers, and we have a lot of diverse officers. So we generally match up our diversity to the population that we're going out to. And so a lot of times, like a group in our city who is staying in a large shelter is all immigrants. And I'm not going to say where it's at here, obviously, because it's not appropriate. But we've been out there many times teaching Police 101. And it's one of our Latino officers that goes out there and talks to them about, how do you get a job? How do you get a work visa? How do you navigate the system when you are here illegally? And most importantly, we want them to know is you can report a crime to us. The Brooklyn Park Police Department and the blue uniform that we wear does not immigration. And so if you are a victim of a crime, you absolutely deserve to have justice and can call us, and the officers will come out, they'll take your report, and you can be a victim. And actually, we remind them that during those cases, you can get what we can give you is called a U visa. So if you are here illegally and then see or witness a crime or a victim of a crime, we can actually give you a U visa that allows you to stay here for extended period of time while that court case is going on. And so we really try to pass on information that serves our community well, and really makes us a well-connected community. That's the important thing to me, because we can't have groups of people that are scared to call the police and then really create an environment where people, wrongdoers or criminals, want to take advantage of them. That is not good for anybody, and certainly as a police chief, not something that I would allow. So the relationships that we've been building are super important.
Okay, it's the U visa. Is that a federal program, or is that specific to the city?
Well, all the visas are federal, but the process comes through the police department, because we just have to authorize that they're a victim of a crime or had witnessed a crime, and then we sign off on the U visa for them. So they do have to apply for it, but it comes to us for approval.
Okay, Wayne, go ahead.
Is the visa? I know you talk about the city of Brooklyn Park as having that as a form for a person. Is that all like every police department within Minnesota? Is that like a
It would be anywhere. So this is a
okay?
program. This is the state. This is the federal immigration system, if you will, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Allows you to, if you're a victim of a crime or witness of a crime, to get an exception to stay here so that you can participate in that criminal court case and go through the court case. So yeah, it's not just unique to Brooklyn Park.
Okay, that's interesting
So
to know. Thank you.
Okay. Peterson?
A follow-up question on that.
Oh, okay,
What's
yeah.
the length of time of the
Mhm.
U visa if someone, obtain it? How long does it last for?
I think it varies. It usually gets the county attorney ends up making that decision at the end of the day. But
Okay.
I don't know. I know it's quite lengthy because I've seen some cases. We get a lot of them, to be honest with you, like
Okay.
a lot of them that come through our office, and I can't tell you. And all we do is verify if they were in fact a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime, and then we verify that and move it on. But it can be pretty extended period of time.
Okay. Peterson?
Okay.
Thank you, Chief Burley. A follow-up question to what Mel just asked. So with the U visa, is it temporary or is it something that leads to like citizenship?
No, it's temporary. It's just it's really meant for a gap to make sure we keep you here so that you can
Mhm.
testify against your perpetrator, or that you can testify to the crimes that you witnessed, to
Mhm.
really have justice as an outcome. And so it's temporary. So you should never just rely on it. If there's other means, if you are here illegally, you should be trying to get here with a work visa or something that's more permanent to make sure that you are less likely to be impacted by immigration officers.
Okay. Chief, we have been hearing a lot like immigrants, right? Commit crimes, immigrant commit crimes. Does the city of Brooklyn Park keep any data on like in terms of crime, right? Whether US citizens or immigrants, right? Is there any data relating to that, like how much crime immigrants commit in the city of Brooklyn Park?
No, we're actually we keep police departments, specifically Brooklyn Park. We track all data, like every crime, every person, every stop, every interaction. We write it down, it goes into a database, and we are masters of collecting data. But we are really intentional about not asking if somebody's illegal and not documenting it anywhere, because we want our staff to understand that's not our role. We don't ask people if they paid their taxes last year, right? Like that's not our role. Our role is crimes, and whether you're here legally or illegally, we don't ask. Now, let me give you the one exception that I think is fair for you to be aware of, and that would be is if the crime itself involves potentially illegal immigrants. Example with like human trafficking. And sometimes we have cases where young women are being taken from, and we've had them taken from Brooklyn Park, and we found them in other parts of the country and trying to get them out of the country. And so we want to reach out to ICE for two reasons. We want their help because they're a great resource when it comes to tracking people. And two is if you're trafficking human beings, you should be deported. Like, I don't want you here. Like, that is a very bad act. And ICE should take some action. So I know that sometimes immigration officers get a bad rap, but they do have an important role in our society. And that is, in my opinion, when we have dangerous criminals and they're here illegally, I think we all want them to be, held accountable and sent back. But we also all want the majority of immigrants who we see in Brooklyn Park are amazing people. I mean, they're running our grocery stores, they're running all our businesses, they're our neighbors, they're our friends, right? Like, and so we want to find that place where, I call them the dreamers, right? The people that are coming here to live a new life and live the dream. Man, we need to embrace them. And that's certainly how we feel as a police department. So that's why we don't track them, because we don't want them identified as individual. And you got to remember, there's different levels of crimes. Do immigrants come and get a little rowdy at a bar and get in a little argument? Sure. But maybe we all do. That's not exactly the crime of the century. That's a little different than selling fentanyl, which is killing tons of our community members. That's a little different than trafficking our women. That's right. There's levels of crimes, gun crimes and things like that we can have no tolerance for. But again, immigrants are human beings too. They're here living jobs and trying to have a little fun when they're not at work. So
definitely.
Balance.
Definitely. Well, folks, tonight we have Chief Mike Brody, who's a chief of police of the city of Broken Park, and tonight our topic is balancing public safety and inclusion amid immigration crackdown. As you all know, since the new administration came to power, immigration has been a huge topic, and you know what? The administration campaign on that, so that's one of the priorities. So, we want to make sure that Broken Park is a city of immigrants, as the chief have said. So we have him here tonight giving us some good information regarding his role as a chief and what it is that he do for the immigrant community. Titus, thanks for joining us. Do you have any question for the chief?
No, I'm sorry for coming on late. And Chief, welcome. We truly appreciate this opportunity. So I'll just ask that you guys go ahead while I observe a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mel, any question?
Yes, I have a question. So, Chief, like I said again, thank you for elaborating on all of those things we asked you. It's huge. My next question to you: how does the department foster trust between the law enforcement and the immigrant populations within the city of Brooklyn Park and its surroundings?
Well, quite honestly, one probably the biggest one for me is we have to be really intentional about the policies and strategies that we use to connect with our community. I often tell the officers, you can't go out at night at 2:00 in the morning and leave a person at a traffic stop feeling like, quite honestly, that you're a jerk and that you don't have their best interest. And then the next day go have ice cream with them and think everything's fine, because, in law enforcement, it's a big trend for us to go do cops and kids fishing and cops and kids ice cream cones and all these events. But yet a lot of people, especially people in color living in poverty, have really different experiences at 2:00 in the morning than that ice cream cone festival that they may have seen kids at the previous day. And I tell you that because the strategy that I've deployed is really clear to my staff that we got to be actively pursuing police legitimacy at every interaction. And what I mean by that is every time we interact with a human being in Brooklyn Park as a police officer, we need to leave them better than we found them. And it doesn't matter. Sometimes we have to make an arrest. Sometimes we have to issue citations. Sometimes we're helping them change a tire. At the end of the day, they should know that we have the best interest for our society and them, and it's never personal. We can do our job with respect and leave people completely understanding. And the most importantly is give them a voice. Let them understand and ask a question and answer that question. And that's what I'm talking about when I say we need to have that practice. And every time that we have an interaction, I tell the men and women that work in Park, we don't get to have a bad day. We're just in that profession where our trust is so important and quite honestly has been so damaged over the last 400 years. We have to be good all the time. And so that's number one, how we really foster that trust is when people have interactions with the police. You can't have stories when you go to a birthday party like, oh, this cop pulled a gun on me and they ripped me out of the car and they searched it and I didn't have anything and they never explained to me why that happened. And to this day, you're right, we can't have those stories and people being felt like that and then think that we're going to have a lot of trust, because nobody would have trust in that system. And so that's step number one. Step number two is we got to do things like this. Like we got to get our voice out there. And that doesn't matter if it's the police chief here with all of you or an officer at a gas station getting a cup of coffee. When people are near you, have a conversation with them and treat them like the community members that they are. Because as police officers, we truly are leaders. And we need to understand that. And that leadership comes with a lot of responsibility. Putting on that, taking that oath and putting on that badge comes with a lot of responsibility. And you can do a lot of amazing things. You can also do a lot of harm and a lot of dumb things. And so and that'd be the last thing I would say is there's got to be accountability. I make that really clear to my staff is I love my staff and I have amazing people and I have an incredibly diverse police department now. And we've worked hard to get there, but I've been clear to them that if you don't follow the rules, I will absolutely hold you accountable. And I do it out of love. I hold my kids accountable, right? Like when my kids make a mistake, I ground them. Yeah. I don't do it because I hate them. I do it because I love them and I need better from them. And no different from my sworn officers is I need the best out of them. And so there's got to be accountability. They got to know that when they're working in Brooklyn Park, they have to be at the highest level. And I think those three things together is how we really move forward and have a lot of trust in our police department.
Yeah. Chief, there's a video circulating on social media. There's a video circulating on social media about, advising immigrants not to go to like an African market or Asian store because, where ISO come and, arrest them, they should avoid such places. I mean, it's like what Broken Park has a huge African and Asian market, right? What are you doing to assure your immigrant population that hey, I know it's like it's not your role to, like you're not, as you said earlier, you're not a working director of ICE. But what can you assure the citizens of Broken Park? I mean, the residents of Broken Park, right? Hey, you can come to the stores, you can go there buy your business. We're not. I mean, no one's going to harass you.
Well, we got to be honest. I can't guarantee that. If ICE wants to come to the African market and grab people that they think are illegal,
sure,
they can do it, and there's nothing I can do. They could arrest me if I interfered with them, to quite honestly. There's a federal law that prohibits me from interfering with a federal agent doing their job. Now, with that said, we have spoken to ICE officers in the region, and we know that that's not what they're doing. They have not been doing that anywhere in the United States that we're aware of, but they are being very aggressive, and all the pickups that they are making have been related to those individuals that have warrants by a judge, meaning they've committed a crime and a judge has ordered them out of the country and they've refused to leave, or people that they call it like a detainer, where they have been ordered through detainment that they have 30 days to leave, and now they're at like 2.5 years and they still have not left. And so these are ones that have gotten also arrested for something. And then through that arrest, the judge has ordered them to leave through this detainment process, and they just refuse to do it. So now they're out enforcing that judge's order of you need to leave. And most of them are like, they've been deported and have returned back 3 or 4 times, and they're picking them up and bringing them back. So the way it was explained to me by the ICE agents is the last 4 years, they were basically told to do no deportation. So even armed robbery, suspects of violent crimes, drug dealers, even though they're illegal, they were told there's hands off, you do not deport them. That has changed. Now they've been told if they got a crime, absolutely go get them and deport them. A violent crime, I should say. So that's what they're doing right now. And I believe that because that's what we've seen across the region. Like, we are not seeing mass roundups of just immigrants because they're here illegally. We're seeing people that have violent felonies, gun charges, that are illegal immigrants that are being picked up by ICE on warrants by a judge and being ordered back to their original country.
Okay.
Now, does that change? I just think we got to be honest. Like, we got to be attentive because some of the things that I've heard this federal administration is indicate that they are going to be very aggressive. I just don't know how far that's going to go.
Okay. Just real quick here, a comment about Gabriel Merchant saying like, did the Broken Park City Council or the mayor authorize your department to assist ICE in any way?
No, they did not. And in fact, we're firming up. We had this conversation last night at City Council meeting. God bless you. And we are doing 2 things. The City Council is looking at enacting an ordinance that prohibits any employee from asking immigration status. And they supported me in what I am doing is relooking at the Brooklyn Park Police Department policy and kind of strengthening the policy up to prevent officers from asking and getting any assistance to ICE during normal immigration type pickups. Now, one thing you have to be careful of, and a lot of people don't know this, is the federal law has a statute, a U.S. code. It's like U.S. Code 813. And that code prohibits me or any city council or any leader of government from creating a law or a policy or a practice that prohibits an employee from reaching out to ICE. That means I cannot tell my officers they can't call ICE.
Oh, God.
But what I can do is tell them they can't ask about immigration status. So they should never get to a point where they know enough information where they would call ICE. Again, those are kind of on the routine traffic stops, going to the African market, getting food and interacting with the police. You will not see a police officer ask you immigration status. And if you do, you call me directly, and I would promise you will be taken care of, because it is not allowed. And the council in Brooklyn Park is extremely firm on the police not being involved in immigration. So that is not going to happen other than very unusual and very dangerous situations.
Okay. Peterson, any question for the chief?
Yes. Once again, thank you, Chief Broly. I was going to ask, so in terms of interactions with individuals, so if you are not directly reaching out to ICE, what if there is somebody that is on the Brooklyn Park's police radar as being a violent criminal, for example? Now you go ahead and inform ICE like, well, we have this person and we kind of know their status, so we need them out of here, or you would just wait for ICE to bring that up.
No, actually, right now we would, even if they were violent, criminally illegal, we would not call ICE. We would process them. So let's be honest, and let's say that they were a murderer. We arrested them for murder. We may know they're illegal. We're not going to ask that question, but they're going to get arrested and sent to court. And through that process, someone's going to figure out they're illegal, right? Because they're going to have to get Department of Corrections is going to have to, get the fingerprints, and they're going to figure that out. And there's very likely that ICE would be notified, but most likely there's probably going to be some judge somewhere that issues some sort of, and this is probably long into the process of court, but somewhere they may be ordered to leave as part of that punishment after they serve their sentence. But even on a murder, we're not going to call ICE. The only time that we would call ICE is when the crime itself involves the immigration. And that's where we talk about like smuggling, right? Where we know that we arrest you for selling fentanyl, and we know that you're smuggling it from Mexico into Brooklyn Park. Then we're going to do it. Or trafficking human beings is another one. Another weird one that I'm trying to sort out right now, and this is kind of a sticking point for me, is gun permits, authorizing gun permits. Minnesota issues driver's license for all. So even if you're an illegal immigrant, you can get a driver's license. Okay. But with that driver's license, you can come and get a permit from me to get a gun as long as you don't have a criminal record. Well, if you're an immigrant, it's very likely you don't have a criminal record because you may have never even been here for more than, maybe a day, maybe a month, maybe a year. And right now we don't ask that question. And I have a little bit of concern about, is that the best interest in public safety to issue guns to people that are here illegally, and we may not be sure of their identity or their name. And so that is one I'm wrestling right now, where I'm not sure or not we're going to make that exception to allow our staff to ask if they're illegal or not.
So just to clarify then with that, right? If someone has a Minnesota driver's license, do you just issue it and they come for a gun permit? So do you make sure that if they apply for a gun permit, do you guys issue them the permit because they have a driver's license?
Yeah, well, and we do what we do is a background check. Okay, but our background check is just the United States, right? It's all the United States criminal justice systems that we check for. So if you got arrested in North Carolina and you shouldn't have a gun, we would know about it. But if you came here from Mexico or any country, we wouldn't know what you did in that country. And if you're not here legally, we wouldn't have, we wouldn't know. Okay. So that's kind of a little bit of a loophole. And that's one of the sticking points I'm trying to navigate right now with the new policy.
I know, right? Yeah, that's a tricky one. A question here from a commenter, Ms. B. She's saying, is Brooklyn Park a sanctuary city? If not, has this been discussed?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, to be honest with you, because it comes up a lot. And I'm going to disclose to you, I don't fully understand what it means to be a sanctuary city, because here's what I know. We can't enact laws that restrict or obstruct federal agents from doing their job. So we can't say, hey, this is a sanctuary city. You can't come in here and enforce immigration laws. They absolutely can. You can't prevent that. And I'm sorry to answer that. We are not a sanctuary city. First off, that was the first question. Yeah. We talked about it with council. It came up last night in the work session about what does it mean to do that. And it certainly means that we signal to our community that, hey, we're going to support you and find ways to get the information you need and find ways to, restrict our policy that our police department doesn't ask. That would be something a sanctuary city is kind of known for doing, is restricting their police of asking immigration status, which we have and do. We're now considering an ordinance from council that's going to restrict any employee from asking. So that seems to fit in the sanctuary city. So we are doing things that feel like sanctuary city, but quite honestly, a sanctuary city to me is kind of a made up terminology, but more signaling strong support for the immigrants in their community. And I'll take any information or any advice anybody has about that, because I need to learn more, because that question gets asked to me quite a bit. Like, hey, are we a sanctuary city? And I'm like, No, but I don't really even know if we should be or not because I don't know what that means.
Okay.
So,
Silas, do you have any question for the chief?
yes. So, Chief Burley, from my understanding, the sanctuary policies are usually the policies that kind of prohibit the police from collaborating with ICE, giving information to ICE about immigrants or undocumented immigrants. What I'm also hearing from you is that there may be conditions where police might cooperate with immigrants. Is that what I'm hearing? And if so, do you know what policies you guys are working with
Yeah.
to kind of implement this prohibition?
Yeah. First off, I know that a sanctuary city doesn't prohibit employees from working with ICE because there's actually a federal law that says you can't do that. You cannot create a policy or a law that prohibits officers or anybody from calling or connecting with ICE or working with ICE. That definitely isn't a rule of the sanctuary city. But you are right on the fact that sanctuary city feels like it creates a lot of rules to make sure that that is not our relationship, that we're doing immigration work. For example, we're not even asking in Brooklyn Park, we can't even, I restrict the officers from even asking anyone if they are illegal unless the crime itself is a component of being illegal immigration. And we talked about that a couple of times. So that's kind of the weird nuance of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Another question here from the B. Is ICE pulling people over in vehicles? Like, do they function as law enforcement? Do you know?
That's great question. They don't do it in the terms of, yes, the answer is yes. They don't do it like we do it for speeding or DWI enforcement or reckless driving. They would do it because they have intelligence or belief that person is potentially illegal and they're continuing on their investigation. And so they would have specific, they wouldn't do randomized stops. That's not, ICE isn't going to do randomized stop. They still need probable or what's called reasonable suspicion to make the stop. ICE agents are only going to stop a vehicle when they suspect the person in there is an illegal immigrant. And that is most likely because they're doing an investigation or looking for that person related to a criminal act. But I've never seen ICE just stop cars. And actually, I've never seen that in 30 years.
With the recent immigration crackdown, has there been any, like in Brooklyn Park? Has there been any raids in Brooklyn Park recently? Or
I don't know because they haven't called us, and so I can't promise you. I can tell you that they have never reached out to us and asked for our assistance on any raids or pickups or holds. No, that has not happened. Now, have they been out in the city of Brooklyn Park? They can come into Brooklyn Park, and they're federal agents. They could knock on a door and make an arrest, or pick somebody up at work. And quite honestly, nothing's changed. That's been going on forever. I mean, there's been ICE agents doing that work 30 years ago when I stared. That has not changed.
Okay.
Do you
go ahead.
Quickly, do you care to share any education for immigrants who find themselves in these type of situations with ICE officers? What are our rights?
Yeah, great question. I can't tell you I know all the rights because it's way out of my lane here, and I'll be getting out over my skis a little bit. But I can't tell you what to do if you got picked up by an ICE agent. I don't really know what the rules or rights are if somebody here illegally, and how that deportation process works. It's just nothing that we deal with or ever have dealt with, and that's intentional. But I would tell you that if I had advice for people, is I would really start connecting with the resources. There's a lot of attorneys out there that work pro bono, that would be willing to help individuals try to figure out how to get temporary work status, get these mechanisms in place to make you here, even if it's temporary, because there's two different types of immigration violations. There's criminal and civil. A civil violation is like you have a U visa, but you overstayed it. You have a work visa or a green card, but it expired. Those we don't see those. We've never seen those get picked up and sent back. What they usually do is get a warning letter. At the worst, they get called to court where a judge is like, okay, we're gonna give you another 30 days, but you need to start the process. Those are what we call civil violations, meaning it's it's like your driver's license being expired. It's not like you don't have a driver's license. You just haven't taken a new picture. That's very similar. And the consequences are very low. And I've never heard of anybody. I know nobody's going to jail for civil violations.
Okay.
Criminal violations are the ones where you've been deported and you came back anyway. Or you've been told because you committed a crime, you've been told by a judge you have 6 months to get out of the U.S. and you don't, and you're still here. Those criminal violations are the ones that our ICE is looking for and picking people up. So if it was me and I was here illegally, I'd be running out to try to find an attorney to figure out, how do I get a work visa? How do I get, what mechanism can I start to make my legitimacy? Even most of us know, like, the process to become a U.S. citizen is like 10 years. One of my police officers we hired as a cadet was an immigrant, and we had to literally create a job for him for like 2 years, and because we couldn't promote him to police officer because he couldn't get his immigration status figured out, and he did everything he was supposed to do. It was the system was so slow. There was nothing that we could do to make it faster, and it worked out when we got there. But the system's really slow. But even if it's slow, if you start the process and are in the process, you are much less likely to be sought after as being a criminal. And this is the term of the federal government, a criminal violator of the immigration law, and you would be only a civil violator of the immigration law, which again gives you a lot more protection. I hope that made some sense.
Yeah. Wayne, do you have any question for the chief?
My brain is thinking about like the asylum seekers, but my question has not come together yet. So when it comes together, I will share.
Okay.
Well,
go ahead, chief.
And that's why I wish, I would have loved it. It would have done me a lot of good if we could have brought like an attorney, and maybe that's what we should have done is found like an immigration attorney. And my chief's advisory board actually has access to some of them. And I think that would have been really beneficial for us to do that, because I could have learned something. But you hit on when you hit on a pretty interesting point, because there are different rules if you're coming from like a certain country where you're seeking asylum. Like there is already certain rules that pertain to you that give you some protection. I just got to apologize, I'm not very versed in what those are.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, we have Antonio that will be coming on here. As I said, it's I want to bring you on here, right? Because there's not a fear in the community. So I want to make sure what is law enforcement doing, right, to kind of protect, especially like consider a broken part of a huge immigrant population. But we do have our Antonio that will be coming on here, right? Immigration Antonio, to come and educate our folks as well. But Mel, do you have any question for the chief?
Yeah, so I kind of heard, a lot of criminals violation. And you mentioned few, like maybe your visiting visa expiring, you overstay, that is considered. What are those criminal violations that meet deportation criteria that ICE look at, if you know any?
For sure, if you've been deported and returned, that is one. Another one would be you get convicted of a violent felony and get ordered to leave, and you don't leave. So a judge's order puts a warrant and says, hey, you've been convicted of robbery, you served your time, but you have 60 days to vacate the United States, and you don't. Those are criminal violations now of the immigration law. I also believe is crossing the border illegally. So not coming through one of the border passings. Like if you were to literally come into the United States by, running across the border illegally, I also think that is a criminal violation of the immigration law.
Okay, and that's deportable, right? I mean, they can deport you for that if you cross the border illegally. Okay.
Yeah,
and
then deport you for any criminal violation.
Okay, so Deconti want to know, like, what type of community engagement is your department doing in the city of Broken Park?
Yeah, first off, we used to think of community engagement as just doing events. Like we go out and meet at church, and we'd meet, people, and that's part of what we do. We still have events. Like we had a big Halloween party, which was huge at the police department. You all should come next year. We do cops and kids fishing events, and those events are important. But those events, quite honestly, for me as a police leader, those events are not for just the community. Those are for my officers to learn what is expected of them, to build relationships and connections with their police department, and then see what my expectations of them and how they interact with community, and really learn to value the community. And that's where it's important to me. And I say that because, you can't have enough events to really do make a difference. But every officer, every day, having value of the human beings that they serve and treating them, at a high level all day long, every traffic stop, every domestic, every broken down car, every gas station interaction, right? Those interactions are invaluable when they're consistently done well, because the officers or the culture of our organization understands and values the people that we serve. So it's on all fronts of how we show up to every call, how we interact. Quite honestly, it's me right here. It's building the relationship and the trust right here, answering the questions, me being present. This is a big component of community engagement. This is what I can't be any different from my staff. I can't expect my staff to do it and not me do it as well. I got to lead by example. So community engagement is baked into everything that we do at the police department.
Okay. And then another question here from Sa. Do you work with community organizations and local leaders, right, to address concerns from both law enforcement and the immigrant communities?
Yeah, of course. And probably the biggest one is I formed a Chiefs Multicultural Advisory Team. And this group of 14 community members, very diverse, many of them are immigrants, serve me very well as a sounding board of listening to my ideas, my policy changes, my budget concerns, what we should do, how we should deploy resources, crime issues. But they also really give me a strong indication of where our community's at, because they come from all corners of our community, and they let me know, like, here's what is really concerning to the Latino community, here's really concerning to the Nigerian community, Liberian community, here's what we're talking about at our churches and in our gatherings, and everybody's got different concerns, and sometimes we all match up. Like immigration, we all have the same concerns. And so that's probably the biggest group of community leaders that I've brought together, that I meet with monthly, and they're invaluable for me to make decisions and build relationships, because they introduce me to other community leaders.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Peterson, do you have any question for the chief?
Yes, since we're on the topic of community engagement, I wanted to know, do new officers and veteran officers go through like mental health training so that they can recognize what's out there because of the prevalence of mental health issues within our community?
Yeah, extensively. In our academy, we have a community health unit, which used to be called our mental health unit, but we changed the name. And that unit leads our mental health efforts. But one of the first things they do to every police officer is they give them 8 hours of training in our academy. What we call is mental health first aid, which means the basics, 8 hours of the basics, how to identify it, and then how do you navigate and de-escalate those individuals. And that's the baseline. And then after they've been on for a little bit, we require them to go to a 1 week crisis intervention team, which is really an intense, week-long, high-level, how do you work with people that are really activated, really suffering from mental illness, and potentially violent. And these are the cases where we really hone the officer's skills to be able to de-escalate situations.
Okay. Another question here from a commenter is like, does the department be deputized by ICE and be forced to carry out ICE responsibilities?
Absolutely not. Great question. Cannot. The federal government can absolutely enforce ICE and immigration laws. We've made it clear that we will not allow the police. The police department could partner with ICE. They're a federal agent, and we absolutely can, by law, partner with them, but we choose not to. We choose, it's not our role. Again, I'll equate it to just like it's not our role to do IRS, right? We don't do tax evasion. That's not our role. That's a different role of the federal government, and they cannot force us. They cannot deputize us and say, hey, you have to do it. Even though I've heard rumors from the president that they're going to try that, that cannot happen. There's some pretty strong protections for local government. So,
okay, Wayne, go ahead.
I have a question regarding the mental health piece, since that's my areas of practice. For the department, Brooklyn Park, or the Department of Brooklyn Park Police Department, is there like a continuing education process with that piece of mental health? Because you talked about learning the 8-hour basics and then going through a week of crisis intervention plans and learning like the ins and outs. Is that like a continuous process for like all police officer to like Like, how is that structured?
Yeah, every year they're getting touched by it. It
Okay.
might be 1 hour, it might be 8 hours, but it's also baked into our continuous education.
Okay.
Our officers every year attend about 50, 60 hours of continuous education training.
Okay.
Okay. Titus, any question for the chief?
I just wanted to add to that question. Have you guys ever seen maybe a possibility of working with mental health professionals? I mean, collaborating with them in the line of police work, because there are instances where police are ignorant to what, a resident or citizen might be going through. And in some situations, we've seen they mishandle that situation. Whereas if they were partnering with a mental health professional, that situation could probably be handled better. Is there any vision with that aspect?
Man, I was praying you'd ask that question. We lead the state. So we are the first to have what's called an alternative response team. We have 2 of them. They respond to mental health calls. Last year, they responded about 4,000 calls, 911 calls that the police department did not have to go to. That the mental health professionals responded. It's a social worker and a paramedic serves in that alternative response, and they respond directly. We also have a co-responder, which is a mental health professional that rides with our officers and goes to more crisis related calls where maybe somebody's dangerous, like they may have a knife or weapon. So the police have to be involved, but the social worker, the co-responder who's responding with the officer, can engage them at a different level from a different perspective and a higher understanding of mental health. So quite honestly, we are breaking the barriers in that space. It's being duplicated all over. Brooklyn Center just duplicated an alternative response team. And then the Minnesota Chiefs Association is asking me and my team to come present to all the police chiefs this spring in a training, their executive training institute, and show them what we're doing, because it's incredibly impactful. It provides a way better service for our community and those suffering from mental health. 2, it frees up the officers for them to do what they're trained to do, which is really investigate crimes and find criminals. That's what we want them to do as police officers. Dealing with mental health calls was never really supposed to be, in my opinion, a police thing. I mean, absent somebody is dangerous, somehow we just gave it to the police because they're out there and we're like, yeah, you got to respond to these calls now. But there's a better way to do it, and it is through these alternative response teams that provide such better service. Now, I can tell you that because one of the issues that we've had with mental health calls is recidivism, meaning a police officer goes out there, calms things down. 20 minutes later, we're back there because the guy is, breaking out the window, and calm things down. And then an hour later, we're back there.
Sure.
And that's not, it's just because the officers don't have the resources, the understanding, the time to be able to transport them to a shelter or to get them into a mental health facility or evaluate what medications. The officers don't know what medications should be taken or not taken, but the paramedics do and the mental health professionals do. And so they are going to these calls, but we're not getting called back because they're doing the right thing. They're calling the doctor in the evening going, hey, we think the medication is wrong. Or, hey, can we bring this person in? We want them to be checked because they need more medication. They ran out 2 days ago and they got to have it or the behaviors won't stop. Or they find facilities for these people to go that, is much different when you're a social worker and you ask somebody to go to the facility to get help versus a police officer. And a police officer asks you, it really feels like they're telling you got to go. And so the truth is, better outcomes for our community members that are suffering from mental health when they are provided service by our alternative response team. And it's a win-win. My cops are out doing cop things, making us all safe. And social workers are taking care of those suffering from mental health, and they're getting the help they need. And we're not getting called back, which means people are better for having met that mental health team. So,
yeah. Okay. Do you know, like this question from another commenter here? Do you know if the city of Brooklyn Park have any data on undocumented residents? Like how many immigrants live, in the city of Brooklyn Park? Do you know?
We don't know. We know through census data that 1 in 5 people are foreign born. We don't, we intentionally do not track in any way immigration status because we don't want the information. Like we don't want our staff to think we ask the questions. Our policies, practices is that we don't ask. And so we don't ask and we don't track it.
Okay. And then another question here. Do ICE need to show a warrant to enter a home or business?
As soon as practicable, meaning if you try to stop them at the door when they're coming in, they can absolutely come in. But once they've secured the scene, yes, they will need to show you the search warrant to come into your home. That's absolutely true.
Okay. Mel, do you have any question for the chief?
Yes. So I know we kind of focus mainly on the community. I will pose a question to you. What are some of those challenges the law enforcement officer kind of encounter when they're interacting with the community dweller, like resident, to balance law enforcement duties and the needs, for the immigration community as well?
Specifically, like what's the needs of the police department related to when dealing with immigrants, or maybe just you kind of cut out, so I missed part of the question.
Mel, are you there?
Oh, sorry. So
Okay.
my question is, what are challenges? You getting me, sir? Oh, my.
Yeah, I hear you now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What are challenges have you encountered in balancing law enforcement duties and the needs of immigrant communities?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, we really separate the two. Like we are intentional on not treating our immigrant community any different than any other community member. If they're a victim of a crime, we absolutely take care of them. If they're a suspect of a crime, we hold them accountable. We treat our immigrant community exactly what they are. They're our community. They're our community members, and that's how they're treated. We don't separate. We have language lines and translators. We do a lot of things because we serve the most diverse city in the state. Us in Brooklyn Center. I mean, we're the most diverse in the whole state. So we've learned how to be really good partners with our community, and especially our immigrant community. So we don't look at it different. Like there's no different, practice. One thing that we are doing that's different, and this is more about the service that we provide, is being really transparent about what we do and don't do. Like we're trying to put together a fact sheet for immigrant communities. We do Police 101 classes, like I told you, in places where we gather lots of immigrants. We go down and we want them to know the resources. We want them to know the lawyers to get a hold of if they want to start working on their legal status. We want them to have housing and resources to make sure that their kids are in school. So we get them information on the school districts. And so that's one thing that is very important to us, is to get them the resources and get them stable, because as a police chief, I'm very concerned when you have groups of people that are not stable, they can become very vulnerable to those criminals that want to kind of prey upon them, whether it be fraud or other crimes. We want them to be very stable in their lives, and then we know that they will be more resilient to being victims of crimes.
Yeah. Another question here, quick. I don't know if you can answer this or this for immigration lawyer, but there's some like kids that are born to illegal immigrants, right? If ICE come for them, can they deport them? Like, illegal immigrants that have kids here. Can they be deported? Maybe if they commit a crime.
Very complex. If the kids are born here, they are U.S. citizens. Now I know that's being challenged, and the president's indicated that he's given an executive order. I got to be honest with you, I'm not an attorney, but in our Constitution, I do not see that changing. Like,
okay,
the president of the United States cannot change the Constitution. That's just not how it works. And so I don't see that changing. So those kids are U.S. citizens, and cannot be removed. The parents, if they're here illegally, I think they can. I got to be honest, I don't really know. But I assume they can, because if they're technically illegal. So I would have to really would defer you to the attorney on that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this other one from Bernice, right? I know you already answered part of this, but her second question, the second part of this question is a permit. Like, does ICE needs a permit to come to the city of Brooklyn Park to do any arrest? Okay, so they can just come in.
They can come. They're federal agents. They can go, any city, any county, and they can enforce immigration laws. That's authority given to them.
Okay. Titus, do you have any question for the chief?
I was just thinking about, and Chief, thank you so much for doing this for us and the community. We
Of course.
we are so grateful. You don't even know. But I was thinking about the stigma that's associated with criminalizing undocumented immigrants. So in some cases, because of the stigma, have you ever experienced, or your department ever experienced maybe a decrease in crimes being reported during times like these due to fear?
I think so. I mean, I don't know because it's hard to understand what people may not report. But I can, you know, I know that there's examples where we've had places broke into and a neighbor's called and had to report it for them. And we had to bring translator and tell the resident, like, no, you've been a victim, and they're scared because they're illegal. They weren't going to report it. And so we know that goes on. To what extent, we're not sure, but that's one of the reasons that we do these Police 101 classes in groups of anywhere we can bring illegal immigrants together. We do these classes, and we really want to get across to them, if nothing else, is you can be a victim of a crime, and you can call the Brooklyn Park Police Department, and we are going to help you. And we are not going to ask your status. We are not going to enforce immigration. We are not going to report you to ICE. But what we are going to do is help you try to reclaim your property, or get justice for whatever crime that you were a victim of.
Okay. Just real quick, another question here. Are there programs in place to recruit and retain officers who reflect the diversity of Brooklyn Park?
Yeah, the biggest one is our cadet program. So we have a cadet program where we recruit diverse individuals that a lot of them are, some of them are right from our high schools, to be honest with you. Our school resource officers recruit them, but it's an open process, and it's intentfully about diversifying the police department. But we bring them in, and there's a selection process, and then we pay for we pay them to work at the police department as a community service officer or as a cadet. They wear a light blue shirt, and they help officers do things like tow cars and write parking tickets and pick up mail and just a lot of tasks like that. But they also get mentored by a police officer this entire time, where they do ride-alongs and start to get mentored about what police work is. And we pay them to go to college, and we pay them to have their law enforcement degree. And as soon as they complete their law enforcement degree, then we put them in our academy and we promote them to police officer. And the majority of our diversity in Brooklyn Park has come through that program.
Okay. So
very successful.
Yeah. So right here, then real quick then. So you have a mentorship program. The city of Brooklyn Park Police Department has a mentorship program then. Is that true?
It does. Yeah. There's the mentorship program for us is our cadets that we're bringing in get assigned to a police officer. And that's because we're really working with them to build their skills to become a successful police officer. And so that's what it's around. We don't have a mentorship program, like a community mentorship program per se.
Okay. Peterson, any question for the chief?
No, I don't have any more questions. Thank you very much, Chief. Really.
And okay, so another one here, Chief. The question that come in very hard. Folks are really enjoying you here. I mean, the kind of education information you are giving our community. So, folks, tonight we have Chief Mike Brody on here. He's the Chief of Police, City of Brooklyn Park. And we are discussing balancing public safety and inclusion amid immigration crackdowns. We'll take this for about 10, 15 minutes because, we don't want to keep the chief here all night. He's very busy, running a city of 87,000 folks. So, but Chief, we are very, very happy having you here tonight. Another question someone asked here is like, what is the overall crime rate in Brooklyn Park like right now?
Yeah, good question. So our crime is down. We're at the lowest level of crime in 30 years, total crime, which is pretty amazing. That's just because we finished up 2024. So our violent crime is down 20%, just violent crime. That's rape, robbery, and murder. So we're excited about that, but we also recognize that we're coming from a pretty high place. So our crime rate had been historically very high, and we'd love to see that it's trending down. This is the third year in a row that it's been going down. So I equate it to we're on the right path. We are reducing crime substantially, but we got a lot more work to do.
Okay. Mel, do you have any question for the chief?
Yeah, Chief, thank you again for taking upon your time to just go through all of these important things we are discussing as they currently happening. I know you mentioned U visa. Is there any other programs out there that can help immigration aside from the U visa you mentioned earlier?
I wish I knew, to be honest with you. One of the things we talked about last night at council is trying to find more resources that we can put on our website and get out to our immigrant community. And so we're trying to educate ourselves on what we can kind of bring together. I know that there's certain attorney groups that are out there. So we are, as a city, we're trying to figure that out.
Okay. And then, Broken Park has a huge Liberian population. So someone wants to know, what's your favorite Liberian food?
I don't know, because I eat everything and I've eaten so many amazing things. I don't always know what it is, and they tell me and I'm like, oh, okay. And I just keep shoveling it in. So I'm kind of a glutton that way. I haven't found any Liberian food I don't like. So,
oh man, so you like everything, right? There's nothing specific. Okay.
Yeah. On National Night Out, I always like to go out and visit. And I always I have a lot of Liberian partners out there. I seen Bernice on here, and so I always try to seek out Liberian parties so I have the food. So, but I don't know what I'm eating. So, and I'm told 100 times, but I'm like, I don't know, it's really good.
Okay. Another question for you here, quick, right? What steps is the Broken Park Police Department is taking to avoid implicit bias? Your city is very diverse. What steps do you take to avoid those?
Yeah, great question. So we have trainings. We've obviously include trainings continuously about addressing unconscious bias a lot, right, in our work. But I think, and it's effective and it's a great tool. We've used it. But here's one thing that I believe. Is that Binta? I think I seen Binta on there.
Yeah. No, it is Binta.
That's one of my favorite people in the world.
Okay.
Hi, Binta.
That's nice.
Binta's made amazing food for me as well. I've had it many times. It's fantastic.
Well, that's what you say. You love cassava leaf. That's what.
I didn't even know that's what I was eating.
Oh, okay.
But I loved it.
Okay.
But I will tell you, all the trainings you go to, and they're good, and we all can learn from them to really try to bring forward our biases so that we be conscious of them and we navigate around them. But I will tell you, as our police department becomes increasingly diverse and you build deep relationships with many different cultures, and you learn, quite honestly, to love them and to partner with them. And in law enforcement, these men and women, work really close together, and they go into some pretty hairy situations that they really have to depend on each other. Sometimes their lives depend on each other. You can't replace that type of connections with your diverse partners. When you go into a briefing room in Brooklyn Park, it's like United Nations in there. And I offer that because, right, they're United Nations, and they may come from different places, but they're a family, right? And so whatever biases they have really get washed down when they can ask person like, hey, why do you, and you'll hear that, like, hey, why does this happen in your culture? Or why does this happen in your culture? And that type of connectivity and deep relationship is a difference maker. And again, I'm not minimizing the trainings that we put our staff through, very important, but as we become more and more diverse, those issues seem to be going to be less and less important in our community.
How has the city evolved, right, since you started serving in the city as a police officer and now as a chief of police? How has the city evolved in terms of the immigrant population?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I'll be honest. I think it's a pretty neat story. Like, our city was somewhat diverse, but really starting in the early 90s, we've seen the Liberian population, particularly really the West African, really start to show up in our community. And quite honestly, early on, there was a lot of 4 o'clock in the morning baby showers that were like 3,000 people down the street. and nobody would shut off the music, right? Like there was some conflict. I was there many times. Like,
Okay.
why are you having a baby shower at 4:00 in the morning? And why do you have 4,000 people here? But quite honestly, we went from that to really where we're at today, where our community is incredibly diverse. And I'm going to knock on wood, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but from my perspective, we don't have a lot of the racial problems that we've had in the long time past, but certainly in our community. Like one of the things that our HRC is very attentive to is how many hate crimes that we have. And we don't, one is too many. I want to make that really clear, but we don't have that many for an incredibly diverse community. And so one thing I would say to answer that is, I feel like it's an amazing place because our diversity is diverse, right? Like it's I can't remember what's, 1 in 5 is foreign born. Like we speak 24 different languages in Brooklyn Park. There's a whole bunch of amazing stats. And quite honestly, we got a great community that gets along with each other really, really well. And I think that's just amazing.
Okay. Well, folks, we can't keep the chief all night, so I will give one or two of my panelists one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Mel.
Well, Chief, thank you again. My last question to you would be: what message do you have for the immigrant residents regarding their safety and rights within their community, especially the Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center community?
Yeah, great question. My Reader's Digest to a community member would be. We're not immigration. Local law enforcement is your advocate, but we cannot protect you if you're here illegally. If the federal government is set on enforcing immigration laws more than they have in the past, and that's clearly what they're going to do. The best advice I can give you is start a process to figure out how you can protect yourself and your family, because I don't know that just hiding is going to be the right answer. Like if we need to get resources, let's figure out how to find the process to get started and make it really difficult for you, to leave again, because our community, we want you here. But again, the federal government and the local Brooklyn Park Police Department, although we partner with like FBI in certain investigations, we don't partner with ICE other than very rare circumstances. And so, they can enforce immigration laws, and there's really, at the end of the day, we could say we're sanctuary city. We could say all sorts of things. There's nothing we could do to stop that. And so I would ask community to take it really serious and find ways to make yourself safe. And to me, that really starts with find immigration attorneys and educate yourself on what the next steps are to protect yourself.
Okay, Peter, any last question for the chief?
Okay.
And then.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chief Bruley. My last question is, the policies that you have in place that it's working well for the department, have other departments from around the country reached out? Because I know you guys are all in talks with each other. Do they reach out to say, oh, we want to see how we can implement this in our department so that the culture can change?
Yeah, any policy, or the immigration policy, or just generally policies?
Just general policy.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the areas, and that's pretty common. Some of the areas like in mental health, a lot of police departments are calling, trying to figure out what we're doing and modeling our work. We also have a new community intervention unit, which is really neat. And I think you all would be fascinated by all that work as we're standing it up. And that is an internal unit in the police department that really pulls up alongside law enforcement, but they're civilian, and their role is to go out and figure out, like, how do we find alternative ways for individuals committing crimes? Like if we find somebody in the stolen vehicle, but they're not the driver, we usually let the passenger go. But, they did get into a stolen car, and they did know that there was a gun in the car, but who's helping them and their families figure out what resources we need to help that youth? And so we're doing that kind of work, and we get a lot of requests on what's our policies around that, how we're doing that work. But you know what, quite honestly, with the immigration policy, what I did this week is I started getting everybody else's policy. And I looked and I said, you know what, as great as I thought our policy was, I think it can be better to serve our community, and I'm looking to tweak it. So it's pretty common for, I think, progressive leaders to want to look for, are we doing it the best? And then use other people's resources to say, can I learn from this? And for me, immigration policy. I've learned, we will be making changes to our immigration policy here in the next couple of weeks. And it will be, Bernice was on here. It'll be going to our CMAT for review, and they will tell me whether or not those changes should be made.
Okay. And then last question: what is your vision for the city of Brooklyn Park in terms of public safety and inclusion?
Yeah. For me, it's about what I kind of started out with, and that is creating a culture in law enforcement that inherently values the people that they serve, and understands that we don't make a widget, right? We're not here making some sort of tool. We serve people. That's the industry that we're in, is the public service industry. And we got to value people's trust in us, and we got to foster that at every interaction, and we do that, and it has to be every day. Like I told you, my staff do not get to have a bad day. We got to be at our best every day, and that's one of the reasons why I built a really robust wellness program, because I need our officers to be their best every day, and they can't do that if they don't take care of themselves. They can't take care of other people, and so we make sure that the officers take care of themselves, both mentally, emotionally, physically. And then we demand that they go out and do it right with our community. So that vision is what I started out 2 years ago as a police chief, and that is unchanged today.
Well, Chief, thank you so much for your time. It has been good having you here tonight. Great.
Thanks a lot, Chief.
It's great having you. You provided a lot of great information to our audience tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Great to see you, and I hope I get invited back.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you so much.
Together as one, we've created a home.